Most men are not heartbroken because women are cruel. They are heartbroken because they believed a story about human nature that is not real. They believed love alone guarantees loyalty. They believed kindness guarantees respect. They believed emotional intensity guarantees permanence. And when those beliefs collapse, they search for someone to blame. They blame women. But if Machiavelli were alive, he would not blame women. He would say, "You misunderstood power. This is purely noetical, where we examine power without emotion, behavior without illusion, and strategy without fantasy. Here we do not attack genders. We analyze incentives. Today, we are examining what many call female nature. But we are doing it through the lens of Machiavellian realism. That means this discussion will not be sentimental. It will be structural. In this lesson, you will understand why loyalty changes when advantage changes, why attraction often follows strength and stability, why affection without boundaries weakens, why resentment is usually a reaction to lost leverage, and why the real solution is not blaming women, but increasing your position within the structure of power. This discussion is educational and philosophical. It does not promote manipulation, hostility, or disrespect toward anyone. It is about understanding how incentives shape behavior so you can act wisely and with discipline. If you are looking for anger, this is not your place. If you are looking for clarity, stay. In The Prince, Machiavelli explains that people are ungrateful, changeable, cautious when danger approaches, and loyal only while it benefits them. He was not speaking about women. He was speaking about human beings. He observed politics in Renaissance Italy. He watched alliances shift when power shifted. He saw supporters disappear when risk increased. His conclusion was simple. People are guided more by advantage and fear of loss than by permanent affection. That insight does not stop at politics. It extends into relationships. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If someone leaves when your power declines, that is not a mysterious female instinct. That is human alignment with stability. Machiavelli warned rulers never to rely only on love, because love depends on obligation. Obligation weakens under pressure. Consequences do not. Machiavelli teaches that it is safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Many people misunderstand this statement because they read it emotionally instead of structurally. He was not encouraging cruelty, abuse, or domination. He was describing reliability. In his analysis of power, love is unstable because it depends on feeling, gratitude, and personal attachment. Fear, however, depends on consequence, and consequences are clearer than emotions. When Machiavelli speaks of fear, he means the certainty that actions have results. He means that when a boundary is crossed, something happens. When disrespect appears, it is corrected. When loyalty is broken, access is withdrawn. This creates predictability, and predictability creates stability. Love, on the other hand, depends on mood. Mood depends on circumstances. Circumstances change. A person may feel intense affection today and feel distant tomorrow because stress increased, opportunities shifted, or new options appeared. Emotion rises and falls with environment. Machiavelli observed this in politics, where citizens praised a ruler during prosperity and abandoned him during hardship. The same pattern appears in relationships. In relationships, when there are no boundaries, respect slowly erodes. This does not happen overnight. It happens gradually. If there is no consequence for small acts of disregard, those small acts become normal. If someone can cancel plans repeatedly without response, they begin to assume their time is more valuable than yours. If someone speaks disrespectfully and nothing follows, that tone becomes familiar. Structure prevents decay. When access is unlimited, value slowly declines. Human beings often appreciate what is scarce more than what is constantly available. This is not cruelty. It is psychological conditioning. When something can be accessed at any time without effort, its perceived importance lowers. This principle applies in economics, in politics, and in attraction. Machiavelli understood scarcity as a tool of power. Leaders who made themselves too available weakened their authority. Leaders who maintained measured distance preserved mystique and control. When a person centers their entire identity around another person, tension disappears. When there is no independence, no personal mission, no separate growth, the relationship loses polarity. Attraction often requires difference in movement. If one partner becomes entirely dependent, the dynamic shifts from mutual interest to imbalance, and imbalance reduces desire. This is not bitterness. It is observable behavior across cultures and generations. Modern research supports the idea that attraction is linked to perceived stability and competence. Studies in evolutionary psychology have consistently found that both men and women prioritize signals of long-term stability when choosing long-term partners. Across large cross-cultural surveys conducted in more than 30 nations, women have repeatedly ranked financial stability, ambition, and the ability to provide security higher than men have when evaluating long-term partners. Men, in contrast, have consistently ranked physical attractiveness and youth higher. These patterns have been replicated in multiple large-scale studies over several decades. They are not random internet claims. They are documented trends. They do not mean every individual follows the same pattern, but they show statistical tendencies. Machiavelli would not interpret these findings as moral judgments. He would interpret them as incentive alignment. If stability increases survival and comfort, people will prefer stability. If competence signals future growth, people will respond to competence. If strength reduces risk, people gravitate toward strength. The mistake many make is believing that attraction is based only on kindness or emotional intensity. While kindness matters, it does not replace structure. While emotion matters, it does not replace competence. Machiavelli's point remains steady. What is reliable endures. What is emotional fluctuates. And in both politics and relationships, stability is more powerful than sentiment. This is not a moral statement. It is a preference pattern that has been repeatedly documented in social science research across different cultures and time periods. When researchers observe consistent trends in partner selection, they are not assigning virtue or blame. They are identifying tendencies. Patterns do not mean every individual behaves the same way. They mean that, on average, certain signals carry more weight in long-term decisions. Machiavelli would not argue with data. He was not sentimental about human behavior. He was observational. He would look at patterns the same way he looked at shifting alliances in Renaissance Italy. He would not ask whether the pattern is kind or unfair. He would ask what it reveals about incentives. And he would say something simple. People align with what improves their condition. If a partnership improves security, stability, and future prospects, it strengthens. If it begins to threaten stability or reduce perceived benefit, strain increases. This is not cruelty. It is alignment with self-interest, which Machiavelli identified as the central driver of human action. Now consider divorce statistics. In the United States, approximately 70% of divorce filings are initiated by women. Among college-educated couples, research has shown that this percentage rises even higher. These figures have appeared consistently in reports from family law studies and national surveys over the past decade. Researchers do not interpret this by claiming women are immoral or disloyal by nature. Instead, they point to factors such as dissatisfaction, emotional disconnect, unmet expectations, imbalance in responsibilities, or perceived instability in the relationship. Some studies also show that when women experience increased economic independence, their likelihood of leaving unsatisfying marriages increases. That independence reduces the cost of departure. Machiavelli would interpret these same numbers in structural terms. He would say that when the perceived value of staying drops below the perceived value of leaving, alignment changes. When the cost of exit becomes lower, the threshold for dissatisfaction becomes more decisive. When expectations are not met, loyalty weakens. This principle is not limited to relationships. It appears clearly in political behavior. When economic conditions decline, incumbent leaders often lose elections. Voters who once expressed support withdraw that support when unemployment rises, inflation increases, or growth slows. The same citizens who praised leadership during prosperity may demand change during hardship. Political scientists have documented this repeatedly. Economic downturns are strongly correlated with lower re-election rates for incumbents. Voters shift loyalty when performance declines. They do not usually describe this shift as betrayal. They describe it as accountability. Machiavelli observed the same thing centuries ago. In times of prosperity, rulers are admired. In times of crisis, they are questioned. If they cannot restore order, they are replaced. The mechanism is identical. When perceived performance declines, allegiance weakens. When benefit declines, attachment weakens. When stability declines, trust weakens. This does not mean affection is fake. It means affection is influenced by conditions. Machiavelli would not be surprised by modern divorce statistics. He would see them as another example of human beings responding to structure. When expectations are not met and alternatives are viable, people move. The lesson is not to resent this pattern. The lesson is to understand it. Because once you understand that alignment follows perceived improvement, you stop asking why loyalty changed. You start asking what changed in the structure. Human beings adjust to advantage. This is not a cynical sentence. It is an observable pattern across politics, economics, and personal life. When circumstances change, behavior changes. When options improve, expectations rise. When risk increases, caution increases. Human beings do not remain fixed while their environment shifts. They respond to it. Now let us bring in Nietzsche. Nietzsche argued that life moves towards strength. He believed that human beings are drawn toward vitality, growth, confidence, and upward movement. In his writings, he described what he called the will to power, not merely political control, but the drive to expand, improve, overcome, and rise above limitation. For Nietzsche, health is expansion. Decline is contraction. Attraction, in many ways, follows expansion. He criticized resentment strongly. Resentment, in his view, is the habit of blaming others for one's lack of power. It is the emotional strategy of declaring strength immoral because one does not possess it. Instead of building capacity, the resentful person builds criticism. So when men complain that women prefer confident, stable, high-status men, Nietzsche would not be surprised. He would not treat it as shocking or unfair. He would see it as alignment with vitality. Confidence signals stability. Stability signals security. Security reduces risk. These signals are attractive not because they are fashionable, but because they imply survival and growth. Nietzsche would ask a direct question, "Why are you resentful?" instead of powerful. He would not mean powerful in the sense of domination. He would mean disciplined, competent, self-directed, and independent. He would argue that attraction follows strength the same way opportunity follows competence. Machiavelli and Nietzsche agree on one important point. Weakness invites loss of influence. In political life, Machiavelli observed that rulers who appeared indecisive or unstable lost support. In personal life, similar patterns appear when a person lacks direction, lacks boundaries, or lacks self-respect. Others unconsciously reduce their investment. Now let us examine structural power. Economic research has repeatedly shown that income inequality shapes social and relationship patterns. When wealth becomes more concentrated and competition increases, partner selection becomes more selective. In competitive environments, individuals evaluate long-term security more carefully. When resources are unevenly distributed, the stakes rise. Choosing the wrong partner becomes more costly. Studies across different countries have shown that in periods of economic uncertainty, marriage rates often decline. During recessions, couples delay marriage. Fertility rates also decline in many regions during economic downturns. Cohabitation patterns shift. These trends have been documented across multiple economic cycles. This suggests something important. When the future feels uncertain, people become more cautious about commitment. They seek greater stability before investing long-term. Machiavelli constantly observed how environment shapes loyalty. In unstable regions, alliances were fragile. In prosperous and secure regions, loyalty was stronger. He never blamed individuals for responding to risk. He did not accuse citizens of being immoral when they abandoned weak rulers. He understood that instability reduces attachment. He adjusted his strategy to match structure. So when people say, Female nature is hypergamous, Machiavelli would simplify it. He would remove the emotional language. He would strip away the accusation. He would say, human beings prefer upward stability. People move toward conditions that increase security, status, and future possibility. Men do this, women do this, voters do this, employees do this, investors do this. It is not a gendered instinct. It is alignment with advantage. And once you understand that, the conversation shifts from blame to positioning. Because if human beings prefer upward stability, the strategic question is no longer why they do. The strategic question becomes, are you moving upward? Men pursue beauty. Women pursue security. Both pursue advantage within their own value systems. This does not mean men care only about appearance or that women care only about money. It means that, on average, patterns of preference reflect different signals of value. Beauty signals health, fertility, and vitality. Security signals stability, protection, and long-term predictability. These signals developed over long periods of human survival. They are not modern inventions. Large cross-cultural studies in psychology have repeatedly shown that men, on average, rate physical attractiveness higher in long-term partner selection than women do. Women, on average, rate financial stability, ambition, and reliability higher than men do. These are statistical patterns, not rigid rules. Individuals vary, but the patterns appear consistently across cultures and decades. Both sides are pursuing advantage as they define it. It is exchange. Exchange does not mean cold calculation. It means that relationships involve mutual benefit. Emotional connection matters. Affection matters. But beneath emotion, there is structure. Each person evaluates whether the relationship improves their life. If both feel improvement, the relationship strengthens. If one begins to feel decline, tension begins. Now consider boundaries. Research in relationship psychology shows that couples who maintain individual identity and autonomy report higher long-term satisfaction. Longitudinal studies tracking couples over many years have found that when partners maintain personal goals, friendships, and independent growth, satisfaction remains more stable. When one partner becomes overly dependent or abandons personal identity entirely, dissatisfaction increases. Overdependence creates pressure. When one person relies entirely on the other for emotional stability, validation, and purpose, the relationship becomes heavy. It loses balance. Autonomy preserves respect. Independence preserves attraction. Scarcity increases appreciation. This principle is not only psychological, it appears in economics and social behavior. When something is constantly available, its perceived value declines. When access is measured, appreciation increases. This is why limited resources are often valued more highly than unlimited ones. The same pattern appears in attention and presence. Machiavelli understood scarcity deeply. A prince who distributes favors too freely weakens his authority. When rewards are constant and unconditional, they lose impact. When access to leadership is unlimited, mystique fades. Authority depends partly on distance and selectivity. A leader who is always accessible loses mystique. A ruler who attempts to please everyone loses control. Machiavelli warned that generosity without restraint leads to loss of respect because it removes discipline from power. The same principle applies socially. If a person makes themselves constantly available, always agreeable, always accommodating, without boundaries or standards, their perceived value decreases. Not because kindness is wrong, but because unlimited access reduces tension, and tension sustains attraction. If you remove challenge, remove growth, remove direction, attraction weakens. Growth creates forward movement. Direction creates purpose. Challenge creates engagement. Without these elements, relationships become stagnant. Stagnation reduces excitement. Reduced excitement lowers emotional intensity. This is not because women are cruel. It is because nature responds to value. Value is not only money or status. It includes emotional stability, competence, purpose, and strength of character. When those qualities rise, attraction often rises. When they decline, attraction often declines. Machiavelli would not moralize this pattern. He would observe it and adjust strategy accordingly. He would say, Maintain your structure. Maintain your independence. Maintain your value. Because when value is sustained, alignment is sustained. And when value erodes, alignment shifts. Ask yourself honestly, are you blaming nature? Or are you improving your position within it? Are you building strength? Or demanding loyalty without leverage? Pause and examine your structure. This lesson is not about accusing women. It is about removing illusion. Machiavelli teaches that people support strength, avoid instability, test boundaries, shift when incentives shift. Understanding this removes resentment. It replaces it with strategy. If you want stability, build competence. If you want attraction, maintain discipline. If you want loyalty, create value that is difficult to replace. Do not complain about preference. Become preferable. That is Machiavellian realism. If this sharpened your perception, subscribe to Purely Noetical. Because this channel is building something long-term, a structured archive of clarity about power, behavior, and strategy. Each lesson strengthens your awareness. Each awareness strengthens your position. And position determines outcome. Return for the next analysis. Because the ruthless truth is not that women are dangerous. The ruthless truth is that human beings respond to power. And if you understand that, you stop reacting. You start positioning. And that changes everything.